The death of the mainstream. This is something that has got a lot of traction over the last few years. It's not a new concept. But what's happening in the industry, it seems like over these last few years, it's only confirmed this hypothesis more and more and more. Now, of course, this is primarily a music channel, and that's what today's topic is going to stick to. But I would say the idea of this concept does span into other areas of entertainment as well, such as celebrities, such as TV shows and movies. Although generally, we will be talking primarily about music, as I stated. But what exactly does this mean, this idea of the death of the mainstream? How does this correlate, and does it correlate to indie music in general? And where does the future kind of go from here? All three of those questions we are going to get into. But just in case, if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. I really appreciate you taking the time out to check in and check out this video. Feel free to check out other videos as well. We love talking about any random indie band that you listen to. Always feel free to drop suggestions as well. And if you aren't new here, if this is your return, well, welcome back, especially if you have subscribed to this channel as well. So let's get back into it. The first question, as I posed in the beginning, we have to clearly define what death of the mainstream means. What is that? And so let's split it up into its two main sections, right? Let's start with mainstream. What is that? Well, mainstream media is pretty much any big corporation, company in the entertainment industry, right? And so, I mean, the bigger they are, the bigger influence they have over people's livelihoods, right? So in the movie industry, I mean, one big, huge one that comes to mind is like Disney, right? How they control Marvel, how they control their own Disney films, how they control Pixar, Star Wars, so on and so forth. They are mainstream, right? Because pretty much if they release anything, they have the biggest way of influence in order to market out their product. Now, in the music industry, you could pretty much just liken mainstream to pop music, right? Because pop music, then the celebrity of that musician just skyrockets, right? Rather than maybe a musician that decides to stay underground or indie, the musician that kind of signs up for that is immediately just thrust and becomes into household names, right? So sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's purely an accident, and then they go along with it. But yeah, you think of like any major, household musician nowadays, you think of like your Taylor Swifts, your Beyoncés, Kendrick Lamars. They are your pop, your mainstream artists in the music world. So that explains what mainstream is, right? And then you have indie, that's pretty much the complete opposite of that, where they deliberately, or they just don't get recognized, keep a low profile. You don't really hear about them. If you were to go up to like maybe 10 people on the street and mention this band name, this group name, or a musician's name, I would say, if they're indie, 7+ out of those 10 people probably don't know who that band is. That's kind of how you could kind of decipher. Of course, I doubt you're probably going to do that, but that is probably a quick way to decipher if a band is indie or not. And so the other word in that phrase, death of the mainstream. Like I said, I think especially since the end of Marvel's Golden Age run, probably leaning right into when COVID-19 came out, it's been more and more of the death of the celebrity overall. But this has led to the death of mainstream media. More and more, I think the easiest way to illustrate this is with films, because this seems to be the fastest decay that we're seeing kind of happen in front of our eyes, right? It's also kind of one of the easiest ones to measure, because unlike other entertainment avenues, they are very quick to point to numbers, how much money that they made. Well, of course, there are blockbuster juggernauts in the movie industry still to this date, right? But it's no question that movies are not building the same hype that they used to, especially 5 to 10 years ago. Is this happening in the movie industry? Absolutely yes. Or, I'm sorry, music industry. Absolutely yes. The hype around concerts has gone down tremendously. There are so many musicians that talk about how different concerts are nowadays compared to even like 10, 15 years ago. But especially if you go back 20, 30 years ago, the energy of the crowd is just completely different. You know, they're almost zombie like in structure. They all have their phones out. You know, it's different. Now, are musicians still getting, paid huge amounts of money to tour, to have, huge album releases? Absolutely. And I think that kind of makes the difference between like movies and music nowadays, where they still are getting their money. But I also seen videos kind of highlighting in particular like summer 2025, there was a lack of like a summer music hit. There's almost a meme about it now where it just shows a singular picture of Alex Warren and that's it. Because you think last year Kendrick Lamar had a few different hits over the summer that kind of encapsulated it. But even before him, the summer before, I couldn't even tell you what the kind of summer hit was during that summer 2024. So this leads to kind of the last question, right? How does this correlate or connect to indie music? And does it? Well, in a way, yes. One interesting video that I watched online talked about how what might start happening as more and more people kind of become disconnected to like a singular mainstream source is there's going to be more niche things. And so in music, people are just going to start gravitating maybe instead of just like one common thing or maybe like five common things out in the mainstream, it'll just be one, maybe two mainstream things, and then a bunch of just niche areas. That seems to already be happening, to be frank. If you were to look on Spotify nowadays, you can't keep up with how many new music is being released. I remember talking to my parents about it, saying that growing up in the internet age, it's different now, where there are just so many different bands and groups that, you can literally just spend all of your time trying to keep up with them, and you can't. Now, one day, is this going to lead to maybe just indie music and music in general just being oversaturated? That might be happening, even right now, that might be happening. It's not a problem right now, though, because like I said earlier, musicians themselves are getting paid. They are not hurting for work, they're not hurting for money right now. So I don't think music itself is going anywhere right now. Now, maybe it's interesting because I know I've told this story on this channel before. I've hung out with like a younger one, and his music tastes, a lot of them were kind of like old classics. So with just a plethora of music out there, maybe modern music might die off for a period of time. I want to hear from you guys though. If you guys want to feed me some feedback, do you think mainstream music is going to die out? And how will it affect indie music overall? Let me know in the comments. See you next week.